Well, you don't need me to tell you that COVID-19 has us trading our travel plans for time at home. You might be running out of activity, so why not relax and enjoy a story or maybe two with us? We got in touch with our old friend Jim Duffy, who can regale us with tales of travel on the Delmarva Peninsula back from the steamboat days of yore. How are you, Jim? It's good to see you this afternoon.
I am great. Jimmy, how have you been? Everything safe and good with you?
Wonderful and good. Thank you so much. Just to remind you, Jim's the author of Eastern Shore Road Trips, the founder of Secrets of the Eastern Shore, and he's joining us via Skype this afternoon. So, Jim, give me a little background here on steamboats.
Sure. The invention of steamboats really began roughly around the time of the American Revolution. It did not, and that was primarily over in England and Europe. They came here around the time of the War of 1812. The first steamboat trip on the Chesapeake Bay was in 1813. And to one degree or another, steamboats were running on the bay from then all the way to 1962. So very nearly 150 years, which is, longer than we've all been driving automobiles. So it was really a time-honored thing. But the real peak period was from about 1880 to about 1920.
And it really revolutionized things for travel on the Chesapeake and the Delaware Bays, didn't it?
Oh, my God, yes. If you think about it, when you are in a sailboat and there's no wind, you're not going anywhere. When you're in a sailboat and a big nor'easter is rolling through, you are heading towards a sheltered harbor. That meant you couldn't predict how long it would take to go from, say, a place like Onancock to a place from Baltimore. And that meant that all the farmers and businessmen there couldn't predict when their product would arrive. It might be 3-4 days late. It might be all spoiled before it got there. And it was the arrival of steamboats that really changed that and brought some kind of reliability and predictability, because the boats just powered through storms and powered through slack winds. They didn't go very fast, but you knew exactly when they were going to arrive, and they always arrived on time. And that sort of, standard schedule really made a difference for our farmers, our watermen, and our seafood processors.
So that's a big impact for business and economy.
Indeed. I mean, all of the canneries that were such a big deal in the middle and late 1800s, a lot of the growth of those in small towns is really due to the steamboats and the convenience of steamboats coming. Steamboats could also carry a lot more stuff than a sailboat could too. And a lot heavier stuff. So yeah, the entire agricultural and seafood economy really powered up once the steamboats got going.
So what did it do for leisure and tourism?
It gave it, again, that predictability was so important. You think about it, by the late 1800s, a place like Johns Hopkins in Baltimore was very well known and was a big deal, and people were going up to see the doctors at Johns Hopkins. And that reliability of knowing they were actually going to get there on Thursday for a Thursday appointment, as opposed to not knowing if they might not get there till Saturday or Sunday, really made a difference for all kinds of regular business travel between businesses, but also, for tourism. People had heard about places like where I live in Cambridge, and places like where you are in Salisbury, and as I mentioned, Onancock, and lots of other places. They wanted to see these places, and they got on steamboats to do it. And it was really kind of the birth of our sort of modern tourism industry, if you will.
Do you have a couple of steamboat stories that you can share with us?
I do. Would you like to hear a couple?
I would love to hear a couple. Hang on to those for just a second. We will be right back to you here in just a minute. I want to hear these. I love it when you tell stories. We are back with our pal Jim Duffy on Skype, the author of Secrets of the Eastern Shore. Listen, Jim, I love talking to you. I love hearing you tell stories, and I love hearing you talk about steamboats. You would have loved to have been around during that time, wouldn't you?
Oh my gosh, Jimmy, I've got a friend named Jack Messick. When he was a young man, he spent a lot of time on the Choptank River Lighthouse on the Choptank River near Cambridge. His father was the keeper at that lighthouse. And he has told me stories about steamboats coming down the Choptank River that just make it sound like the most wonderful experience. The thing was all lit up. There's a Dixieland jazz band playing. It gets louder and louder the closer it comes to the lighthouse. When it's right up next to the lighthouse, Jack always tells the stories that he feels like he could hear the ice cubes clink in the glasses, and people out on the decks and dancing, and it was just like a big party on the water. So yes, you bet I'd love to have been on one of those.
That is huge. Now, it hasn't always been good times, though, right? There were some troubles, problems?
Oh, there could be. Particularly at night, and particularly in fog, these vessels were very heavy, very big, and very hard to maneuver. So if another boat got in the way and those lights didn't appear in time, there were definitely some accidents, and there were fatal accidents. There were also fires. Steam engines could be dangerous affairs and burn up. But I guess the way to look at it when you see those headlines is it wasn't so different from today. There are plane crashes. There are car crashes, but they don't happen to a degree that keeps people off the roads and out of the skies. It was the same kind of thing back then.
Tell me, Jim, about this story about a young woman on Elliotts Island.
All right. Have you ever made the drive from Vienna to Elliotts Island, Jimmy?
I did once. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's 20 miles long, and it's 20 miles of nothing but marshland, right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Before steamboats, that was probably among the most, super isolated places on the Chesapeake Bay. And there was a woman there. Her first name was Bethania. I think the last name was Smith. My friend Ann Foley tells this story in a book she wrote about Elliotts Island. She had never left the island. She was in her 20s, and she'd never been off of the island. And the day came in the 1890s where the very first steamboat ever to visit Elliotts Island came in, and everybody on the island gathered to watch it come in. And Bethania's reaction as it came in was to grab hold of a friend of hers and scream, "Oh my God, look at that. It's big as a drugstore." Now, what was extra funny about that is Bethania had never been off the island, and everybody on the island knew that she had no better idea how big a drugstore was than she knew how big a steamboat was. And so for years and decades afterwards on Elliott Island, the phrase "big as a drugstore" was used all the time in memory of Bethania's kind of faux pas that day.
That is absolutely incredible. Jim, author of Secrets of the Eastern Shore, thank you so much for sharing that story and spending time with us this afternoon, telling us about the steamboats of yore.